Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, and we're here to talk about interesting stories from around the world. We have with us again this week Dan Kang, who here in the Philippines, he is a business owner and a philanthropist. Dan King, how are you doing today, this Sunday?
Hey, Eric. I'm pretty tired, but I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm over here in Pampanga today in the home of my friend Reyes, and we're doing some billiard stuff. Yeah.
Yes, Dan is one of his businesses there is billiards, and we are all over the Philippines today because we will be live in Manila. However, I'm in Cebu and you're in Pampanga, but through modern technology and great Chinese balloon satellites, we are able to do this. You know, Dan, it's interesting, and we're going to get to the news here right away. We'll go back and talk a little bit more during the show about other things. But, you know, just the other day, I think it was Friday, the United States, something flew over the United States. Something the size of a small Toyota flew over the United States, and they don't know what it was. So the United States does what it does best. When it doesn't know what something is, we kill it. So they shot that thing down.
Well, you know, anything bigger than a bread box, smaller than a car.
So they flew one of those U.S. F-22s over Alaska, and they shot down this thing. This comes just a week after they shot down the Chinese surveillance balloon. They are saying that this object that flew over Alaska was not a balloon. It was not like the balloon. However, when they ran the F-35s, we just love to take our jet fighters out and just fly them around for whatever reason. So they took out the F-35s, a couple of them, and they flew past this thing, and they couldn't figure out what was holding it up in the air. It was 40,000 feet in the air. It's like I said, it's the size of a small car. And they didn't know what was keeping it up there. And so they flew around a little bit. One of the pilots said it was messing with his sensors. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, this is the story I got. But they couldn't figure out what it was.
You know, this comes a couple of years after the full disclosure of the UFO full disclosure initiative. And so it's kind of a little bit, wouldn't you think it's a little bit spooky to try to just shoot down anything that's...
You know, that's what I thought. That was the first thing that I thought. I was like, you know, what if this is a probe? What if there's a ship above the earth and this is a probe they sent down? And nobody has been saying anything like this. I thought it was only me. Everybody's like, well, you know, it could be from China, it could be Russian, could be something, whatever. Yeah. But what if it's from outer space? And this is they're a very nice species of people that have come down to talk to us and give us some stuff. And this is their first contact, and we blow it out of the sky.
Well, the full disclosure gave us that evidence that there is, you know, something there that's not earthly that we know about. So, well, yeah, it's a little bit spooky to just be shooting missiles at anything floating in the sky.
So yeah, so I think this has a lot to do with the Chinese balloon, because now, you know, there's a little politics to go along with this, because, you know, Biden got a little bit of flack for waiting so long to shoot down the Chinese balloon, although he had a reason for waiting, because they didn't want the thing to fall down into a school and kill a bunch of children, whatever. So so they shot that thing down. Now they're saying that this thing is not a Chinese surveillance balloon, but it's still it's got everybody nervous. In fact, in the United States this week, several states have said that they are considering a ban on all Chinese citizens being able to buy property in their state because of the Chinese balloon.
Listen. If you have TikTok on your phone, you should not be worried about Chinese spy balloons. Okay? Or Chinese buying property.
You know, the Chinese right now, they are learning all U.S. dances. Because these TikTok things, supposedly they can read, they can watch our videos, and they know all about us from TikTok. So they are learning all our different dances. But I'm just, you know, but, you know, there's besides the fact that some states are deciding that maybe we're not going to allow Chinese to buy land in their state because of these Chinese balloons. there's other things that have been a little bit scary because of all these things that are flying overhead. Now, things fly overhead all the time. You know, this thing in Alaska, it may be some dude in his barn who built something and shot it up in the air. Who knows what this thing is? But they're right now they're trying to find it because they shot it down, but they shot it down in like one of the coldest, darkest places on the planet. So they're having a little trouble finding it. Yeah. But supposedly, a general of the United States called the Chinese general about the balloon. He just wanted to know, we have what we do in the media, and the media, has all their speculations and so forth. The Chinese are surveilling us. They're doing this. But in real life, there's a couple of generals there that talk to each other. And the United States general called the Chinese to say, hey, what's up with the balloon? I mean, is this really a weather balloon? What is this thing? And the Chinese general refused to take the call. So
there's been news that it's been a big deal in China too, like some big backlash, and so China. I don't know if that's just grandstanding, trying to say that it's a huge issue for them too. So I don't know. Originally they claimed there was an accident, right? So they didn't actually deny it.
They said it was an accident. First they said it was a weather balloon, and then they said, oh well, no, it was just one of our balloons. It just kind of went out of the thing.
But why
who
balloons,
knows?
Right? Why balloons?
Who knows what this is? But it leads to believe. It makes you think a little bit. I mean, because we were talking about, well, they have satellites. Why? They have satellites, they have planes, they have all these kind of things. Why do they put a balloon up there that we can all see? And I've been actually looking into balloons because I didn't know anything about balloons. And it actually, balloons have certain things that they can do that planes and satellites cannot do. Yeah, and that is, right. One thing, they can fly really high, incredibly high, 100,000 feet above the planet, almost into the upper stratosphere. And they're very slow moving, and they can stop, like they have the ability to stop these things over something and look down. And the other thing, too, is they can go forever. They can stay up there like for a very, very long time. So there's a reason why, the Chinese may like balloons as opposed to, United States. We love our airplanes, flying them over.
Some of the question could be that had these things been there for the longest time already and never really been noticed, and now we're just now noticing them, or
we're so busy looking at our looking at our dances on TikTok, we forget to look up in the air sometimes and see what's up there. I don't know if this is, they say that there's a lot of these. There's a whole fleet of them floating around the earth. We just don't, we don't know exactly where they are. But here's what I find very fascinating about this, Dan, is that the U.S. intelligence has come out and said that President Xi may not even know about this. He may not even know that there's a program for spy balloons. Because they have Americans have spies all over the place, and they have spies in the Chinese government. Of course they do, just like the Chinese have spies in the U.S. government. And they say that Xi doesn't know about this.
Could be American balloons spying on their own people and getting caught. Who knows about what now?
Who is it in China that's, that's running this program? And they believe that, here's U.S. intelligence, what they believe. They believe these things have already gone over like 40 different countries. So, but we've talked a lot about the balloons and the Chinese, but I want to know what that thing was they shot down over Alaska.
Yeah, just recently, because that it was enough to make the news again, but then this time they don't know what it is. Is this a trend in the news? Is this just a mass trend in the news to, get people to focus on something that that could be there, or to divert our attention from something else? I love getting into conspiracy theories. I think a lot of us are kind of bored with the Ukrainian war because it just keeps going on and on and on. But and so they got to come up with something else. But shooting stuff in our own airspace, that's kind of a big deal.
It's exciting. Especially when they get it on film. They get the film of
I did not know what it is.
the aircraft, going by it and shooting it down. It would be funny, and this would be hilarious, Dan, if they find this thing in the Arctic, in the Alaskan waters out there, and they pull it out, and it's got some kind of weird Klingon markings on it. That would be, then they could come back and go, well, Eric and Dan had it right here on the World News Jam on DZRJ. But, speaking of things on the earth, there's a story that I don't want to do, but I have to do it. And this is there was a big earthquake in Turkey this week, a 7.8er. It was a big one.
A lot of children died. A lot of tragic.
They think 24,000 people have perished in Turkey and Syria now. And the stories that are coming out about this, and we'll talk a little bit about earthquakes here in a minute, but the stories that have come out about this have just been, every day I read a news story about a photographer who's taking a picture of this man who's holding his daughter's hand, who is pinned underneath the rubble. It's been, it's been 5 days now since the earthquake. So after 5 days, it becomes more of a rescue, it no longer becomes a rescue mission anymore. Although they say they have pulled out a baby that was buried in the rubble for 100 hours, which seems impossible. But because right now in Turkey, it is like sub-zero. It is freezing in Turkey, and how anybody could live through the middle of the night trapped under a building with no food and no water, I think it's amazing. But, and there were 2 Filipinos killed in that earthquake. So,
tragic.
It's really bad. They say, usually after 5 days, the chance of survival is less than 6%. Sure. However, they have found some survivors in Syria after 115 hours. Wow. Of course, an earthquake in Syria. Syria has been at war for how long? Forever? Yeah. How long has Syria been at war for?
They have man-made earthquakes from rocket launchers.
They're used to. Syria's used to this kind of thing, I guess. Yeah. But what I found interesting was the white hats. These things called white hats. These are guys that wear white construction hats with cameras on them, and that's pretty much the way we've been able to see a lot of this stuff, because reporters can't get in to the zones because they're so dangerous. So these guys, these rescue guys, have cameras on their white hats, and they've been giving us a lot of interesting information. But the U.S. has given Turkey $85 million. The World Bank's given them $1.78 billion. So they're going to try and see if they can help clean up this mess that this earthquake has left there in Turkey. Let me ask you, Dan, because part of the problem that they have in Turkey is the infrastructure. A lot of the buildings there are not earthquake. They're not ready for earthquakes. Very much like, I have to say this, the Philippines.
Sure.
And a lot of people like me have worried, what if a big earthquake hits, Manila? And with the infrastructure there, is Manila ready for an earthquake? Here I'm going to see if we can scare everybody.
I remember in the 70s when that first movie came out, Earthquake, and they had the big, that was one of the big blockbuster movies, Earthquake, and it was based on the fictional event of an earthquake happening in Los Angeles. And then, I've lived through many earthquakes, living in California, a lot in Japan. And if that happened in Manila, absolute disaster, sure. The way the buildings are made, and from the new buildings, I don't know if those buildings are all earthquake proof now, but or at least earthquake aware, right? But I think the newer buildings being built now in areas, how many earthquakes do they even have in the Philippines? I don't know that statistic, but I don't think I've ever experienced a single earthquake living here at all. Have you?
Well, the Philippines sits on top of a fault line, so there are earthquakes all the time in the Philippines. I mean, there was a massive one in Cebu a couple of years ago. There's earthquakes all the time in Manila, but not big ones. But every year there's quite a few earthquakes that are happening in the Philippines, and people are predicting, although you can't really predict earthquakes.
Yeah.
We say this every time there's a big earthquake in Manila, every time, or a big earthquake somewhere in the Philippines, we go, they're predicting the big one is coming soon. But we still haven't had the super big one.
When I was in California, that was a big thing. I was there at Loma Prieta. I was at I was in a lot of the big ones. In the Philippines, though, specifically, the Philippines experiences so many natural disasters in pockets. The flooding, there's so much of that here. The resilience of the people, I think, is very, very inspiring. I think the people do come together pretty well. Unfortunately, the poverty line is so low that it becomes even a secondary disaster when that kind of thing happens. But the resilience of the people here is pretty strong.
It's true. That's absolutely true. As an American and living through some disasters here in the Philippines, one just recently where the power went out in Cebu for a month. I know in the United States we wouldn't be able to survive, but here everybody's laughing and they're coming out the street.
I love it.
Everybody's got a fire in their backyard cooking food. It's like, okay, all right, let's just go back to like we were when we were kids. We didn't have electricity, and so the Philippines. I think they probably we'll see. They're able to get through disasters better than some of these other countries. But speaking,
do they have in Philippines? Do we have like earthquake like readiness protocol, stuff like that?
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they even have drills in Manila. I've been in some of those drills where they run the earthquake drills and. They're prepared. And I've been in the mall when we had an earthquake, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. It didn't even shake. It just shook a little bit. Everybody screamed. Everybody ran to the door. It's. I think we'll wait and see if the big one ever hits Manila in our lifetime.
The scariest thing about the earthquakes is that it happens so quick. The helplessness is really shocking.
There's nothing you can do. There's no prediction. To this day, they cannot predict earthquakes with all the technology and everything we have. We still can't tell when those earthquakes are coming.
People, the reaction time of people as well. You can do all the drills you want, but when it actually happens, a lot of these people just freeze, right? They don't know what to do. They've been through all the drills, but none of that really happened, right? It's just, I've been through a lot of those earthquakes, and I don't think
our heart goes out to all those people there in Turkey and Syria. We hope that they get they are able to get everybody. It would be great if they could find some more survivors. But speaking of survivors, one survivor I know of is Joe Biden, who survived his State of the Union this week.
That was a good intro. Okay.
I don't want to go through a whole lot of U.S. politics, but we got to talk about the State of the Union because, everybody was waiting for this State of the Union because we all thought that Joe Biden might, he was going to flub it up or he was going to have a heart attack on stage because he is so old. But actually, he did not. Actually, he came off doing okay. He, the Republicans were there booing him and yelling liar and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the back row yelling liar. But it was kind of a setup. He kind of set them all up to say, okay, well, all right, if that's what you believe, then all right. So we're not going to take money from our elderly people. We're going to continue with Social Security. Do I have are you with me on this? So he kind of set the Republicans up a little bit. So I got to say something for Joe Biden. To be as old as he is, and the fact that we're always worried he's going to keel over right there on stage. He actually did pretty well this, State of the Unions I usually find to be
Yeah, well, he did pretty well making it to the State of the Union.
You know, he got up there. He did his thing. Now there were lots of fireworks even before the State of the Union, when everybody was just taking their seat. When Mitt Romney came up to our favorite guy in Congress right now, George Santos, and said, "Hey, buddy."
Oh no,
you don't belong here. And he said it right to his face. He says, "You don't belong here. You should not be up here shaking everybody's hands and sitting in the front row. You need to go to the back. You need to go to the far back and sit because you are a liar." And so George Santos, was like, "Well, I'm not doing, I'm going to do anything I want." And later on, he made a big deal about it. He said in an interview, he made me want to go and sit in the back. My people, have been oppressed for like he's a black person. He said that was before. Like he's a black person in the back of the bus. But this guy George Santos, he's really, I have to say, he's got some chutzpah, if that's the correct word.
Two that we're surprised made it there.
So he's got enough problems. He's got enough problems right now because George Santos he's in trouble now for something else this week. He's got some other problem where he's raising money for his candidacy for the next election cycle, but he hasn't announced his candidacy yet because he may get thrown out of Congress. So he's already raising money. You can't raise money until you announce it. So he's already in trouble for that. So
he gets the Audacity Award. The most audastic person.
I mean, he's I embellished my resume. So everybody embellishes. No, you didn't embellish your resume. You completely made it up and lied about it. So he's got some problems, but the Biden speech that he gave, and I'm not going to sit here and be for Biden or against Biden, but listening to what he did, it almost was like he was the teacher in the classroom and the Republicans were a bunch of unruly kids in the back row. And he was like, "All right, sit down back there, sit down, and listen to what I'm saying." And he was able to, where the speaker of the Republican Party, McCarthy, he looked weak. He looked very weak. The guy was sitting behind Biden. He can't control his own people. But it was a scene, man. You know what, Dan? In the past, and I've watched a lot of State of the Union drinks, I've never seen anything like this, where people booed the president. And
exactly, you reminded me of English Parliament. What they have there. right
exactly Dan.
Yeah,
it reminds me of English Parliament.
When I used to watch that on TV, I used to be like, is that real? Is that the government? Is that how they really conduct that?
It seems like a made up. It seems like it's a show. Like they're putting on a show. They're reading scripts, whatever, but they're not. We said this before, that the Americans could never do that. We could never get through that. I mean, could you imagine George Bush or Donald Trump trying to get through one of those parliamentary debates where they just scream and yell at each other and slam the book closed and then get back on stage and open the book again?
It was crazy. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
I love watching British Parliament. I mean, it's just
entertaining. It's entertaining. That's what it's become now. Just sheer entertainment.
I think they do it just for the entertainment value.
I think so. Everybody's putting on a show. The world is a stage, right? I mean,
which is what I think now, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is what I think is become of the new Republican Party. This is the MAGA guys, the Trump guys, which are like, we're not interested really in policy. We just want the cameras to focus on us. Marjorie Taylor Greene wore the most hideous outfit I have ever seen in my entire life. It was something the Penguin would wear from Batman. It was this giant white, fluffy fur coat that she had on, and all she wanted to do was have the cameras turn around and point at her. And that's exactly what they did. And Joe Biden said at one point in his speech, "Let's stop fighting just for the sake of fighting," which is what I think a lot of what's going on there in the domestic issues, whatever going on in the United States. People are just fighting just for the sake of getting on camera.
It's all sign of the times right now. I mean, and TikTok and all these other apps have proven that all it takes is facial exposure and just being out in the public. As long as you get seen constantly, people don't care. They will follow.
I mean, it's the
sign of the times.
It's using the Trump, book of how to be famous. It doesn't matter if, just say something outrageous that the news has to cover because it's so ridiculously outrageous.
Right. And the more you're in the news, the more popular you are.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that, 9/11 was faked. And for that, she raises so much money. I mean, that's why the Republican Party likes her, because she raises a lot of money, because she knows that there are a lot of people in the United States that believe that the Jews have a laser satellite in the sky that they can shoot down people. I mean, it's just overwhelming. But speaking of presidents,
you can't shoot down the balloons with the laser satellite. You got to use rockets.
I know. What, Marjorie Taylor Greene? Why don't you use your satellite to shoot down Chinese surveillance balloons, or space aliens that are coming down to take us over? But speaking of presidents, Marcos, the president of the Philippines, he's in Japan. He's in Japan right now.
Sure.
And I just wanted to bring this up because every once in a while, when the Philippines makes it to the international news, I like to talk about it a little bit. And it did make the international news because he has gotten 500 billion pesos in pledges from people in Japan for mining and steel and car manufacturing and infrastructure, and energy, manpower.
Sure.
So, a lot. This happens all the time. I mean, the Philippine president goes to some country, and the country goes, "Oh yes, we're going to help you. We're going to do all this for you. We're going to do this." Yeah. But here's what I believe. I believe that Japan is really interested in the military aspect of this partnership. Japan right now is thinking about the possibility of China, who is on their back door, and what is sitting right between the Philippines and Japan is Taiwan, right smack dab in the middle. And I think that Japan really wants to get in on this. The U.S. is kind of restructuring its military here in the Philippines, and I think Japan is looking to get in on that as well.
Japan. Well, I think there's a big misconception about Japan and the military. That Japan doesn't have a military, and it's absolutely untrue. Japan has one of the strongest militaries in the world.
Yes,
that a lot of people don't actually know about because they're still, they still think we're in 1941 Pearl Harbor when that happened. And
exactly. They had to lay down their arms and give up their military, and now they've built it back.
And so strategically, Philippines would be. As far as being in Southeast Asia, the Philippines is becoming more and more important as a strategic location, as it always was. But U.S. coming in, and now you think talking about Japan wanting to jump in there, and I don't know if that's a really bad thing because it's a unified security in Asia.
I think so. I think Marcus going up there and making a deal. Of course, everybody's more interested in the money issues and the investment and so forth.
Sure.
But making the military deal, because I'm sure they're one of the things that I know that they're talking about are doing joint exercises with the Japanese military, and I think that's a very important aspect of his trip there is to get that relationship really rolling, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Well, Philippines being a buffer in between Japan and China. Korea was that for a long time as well. Between Japan and China, Korea was the buffer between trade and relations, inner relations. The guy kind of like the friend of the friend on both sides. And so, Philippines having a lot. China having a lot of interest in the Philippines, and then Philippines going to Japan right now and doing their negotiations. So,
and we can't forget about our buddies in the North. North Korea is still there, and now we know who Kim Jong-un's daughter is. I didn't even know he had a daughter. I didn't even know he had any kids.
That's right. Yeah.
And now this week he paraded his daughter out during their giant military parade where they tried to show their nuclear weapons, which we're not sure if they're really nuclear weapons or not, but they look like it. But they think that he might be grooming her to be the next.
The sister is the scary one. The sister is the scary one. She's the scary one.
I mean, they're all a little frightening. But when you bring out like what is that girl, 14 years old? When you bring out that 14-year-old girl, and she's like, she may be the next leader of North Korea. I'm like,
all speculation. Everything in North Korea is speculation.
Of course, we have no idea. We don't even know if that's his daughter. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is, but we have no. A lot of people didn't even know he had a daughter before this week because he keeps everything secret. Everything is because there in North Korea, he is the god. So you don't ask questions about who the god is, whose children, who the mother is. But speaking of mothers, I wanted to get to this other subject, Dan, to talk about a little bit, which is something that's going on in India, because we want to get around it. We talk about stories going all around the world. In Assam in India, there have been massive arrests this week of men who have married women when they were children. And the reason I bring this up, first thing, it was a big story. It was a huge story in India, and it made it to the world stage because a lot of these guys who married, in India, your parents will marry you off to someone who they think can take care of you better than they can, and so they'll find you a husband and they'll marry you to him when you're 12 or 13 or 14, and then you have a bunch of children, and then you end up not ever going to school and you are living in poverty. But in India, it is illegal to be married if you are a woman under the age of 18. I believe men, it's the age of 24, or which is surprising to me. That doesn't make any sense. But for women, it's under 18. And so a lot of women have been married under the age of 18. And so the government decided to crack down. So they just went into all these places and they arrested everybody who was married to a young girl. And the interesting thing is there are protests now about this coming from the girls. Yeah. Because you took my husband away. How are we going to eat now? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? He was taking care of me. I'm pregnant. One girl's 15 years old and I'm pregnant. What am I supposed to do now? And so this has been an issue for the last week in India as what they're going to do, because they arrested a lot of people. I mean, last week they arrested 2,500 men in this one place. And the wives are all coming forward saying this is cruel interference into their lives. And could the government, keep its nose out of our business? We're married. We love our husbands. What should be the case?
Why now? Why suddenly now?
I think the government decided, because this law has been enacted for a while in India, and it's just now that it's caught up to the point where it's like, okay, now we got to do something about the law. We made this law, now we have to do something. What are we going to do? We have to arrest these guys, and you can spend, I think it's 6 months in jail for marrying someone underage, or being. And a lot of these guys are, they're of Muslim persuasion. They're of the Muslim religion.
India is not Muslim. They're Sikh.
Yeah.
I think, right there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why a lot of these people are yelling discrimination against the minority, because they are of the Muslim faith, and they are being, they keep saying, they're being singled out, they say, because of their faith. Now, I don't know if that's true, because not only has Muslims been arrested, but so has Hindu. Quite a few Hindu people have also been arrested as well. So I think that right now they are doing it. This has gone. There's actually some really bad stories about this, because not only are they going after the husbands, but they're also going after the parents of the girl who married them off. And this one girl, she committed suicide so her parents wouldn't get arrested. Now, okay, that seems extreme, But it's like, okay, we make a law and then we enact it and then we move in to take over, but we didn't think ahead as to what's going on, as to the harm that we may cause.
Well, I mean, the absence of that law prior to it being enacted or even put into place is the absence of that law is from archaic cultural, habits. And so enacting that law, you can't say it's bad, because of course we don't want that to happen, but enacting it and enforcing it all at one time is going to cause havoc in your
country. This is something in the Philippines. In the Philippines, for years, in different parts of the Philippines, girls get married at 12, 13, 14 years old. And Duterte stepped in and said, we're not going to do this anymore. And he made it a law that said you cannot marry, under the age of 18. For girls, I'm not sure. I think the girls are 21 for boys. I'm not sure.
Well, just recently, I was shocked when I heard the news that the age of consent was now no longer 14 or something like that, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, the age of consensual sex in the Philippines is now 16.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was like, huh? That wasn't over 18 before? Like, what?
It can be younger than 16 if both the boy and girl are within 3 years of each other. So if the girl is 12 and the boy is 15 or 14, then it seems to be okay. But there's still an issue about, the girl has to be at least 16.
Sure.
But she cannot marry the guy until she is 18. Because, when Duterte did this, they said, now, this is the news that I read, that 1 in 6 girls in the Philippines was married before the age of 18.
We look at that in worldwide culturally. That all happens from the disparity between poverty and the rich.
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to, really. That's really what it comes down to. If in a perfect world, if we were all in the middle class age, that would probably not even happen.
If you have 10 children and you have to feed all these children, and one of the girls gets to age 13 or 14, and you can marry her off, that is one less child that you have to feed, and hopefully maybe her husband will help you in some way, so it perpetuates. So she, as a young girl, she's going to start having babies at 15 years old. She's probably going to drop out of school. She's going to stay home and take care of her husband. And this perpetuates. And so she's going to grow up. She's going to have children. And those children are also going to be married off to some guy. And so the cycle continues, and poverty continues, especially for young females. And this is something that I understand, when Duterte did this, I understand why he did this, because at that point when he was doing this, the Philippines was ranked 10th in the world for girls being married under the age of 18. So the other issue too is, and I've brought this up before on the show, when you marry a girl at the age of 12 or 13 or 14 and she gets pregnant right away, the chances of mortality of the baby goes up much higher. This is something that I think the death of the child, the chances of the death of the child go up much higher. First thing, they're born into usually places where they might not have the medical facility to be able to handle a birth of a girl of such a young age. And so, and also there's a bigger risk of violence against, younger girls and stuff like that. So there's a good reason to do this. There's a good reason to have these laws. But like what happened in the Philippines, when Duterte made the law, the Muslim community was outraged. Yeah. We've been doing this for years. Why all of a sudden we got to stop?
That archaic cultural habit is, we're in 2023, people.
I know. I know. I understand why Duterte made that move, and I think it was a very smart move, and I think it's a smart move in India Although in India, they have a problem right now, whereas, okay, now you've arrested the husbands. Now what are you going to do? What are you going to do with all the wives, who, are 15, 16 years old and have nowhere to go? So, but that's, I thought that was an interesting story that came up this week, things that we need to change on the earth, which kind of leads us to the next story, which is something I wanted to get to last week, was the doomsday clock. Think about horrible things going on in the world, the doomsday clock. And, Dan, I have talked about the doomsday clock every year for about the last 5-6 years, because it always comes up in the news. I don't know if you know what the doomsday clock is, but it is.
I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar, I have to admit.
So there's a group of people that got this started right after the atomic bomb was dropped in Japan. And so what they do is they say, okay, by looking at the earth and everything that's going on in the earth, we will determine how many minutes we have to extinction to win the entire earth. And this is a real thing. This is like scientists. They're all like, it's a part of, it's
not the Mayan calendar 2012 thing.
It's a big thing. And I watch it every year, and I watch because every year they make it closer. And one time it actually went the other way. When they signed those those deals.
It goes backwards too.
It goes backwards too. When the U.S. and the Russians signed the deals to not to cut down on the nuclear weapons, it went back a little bit. But because of now, with all the things that are going on with climate change, with the Russians, saying that there might have nuclear war coming soon, with famine, with going on, and all these horrible things that are happening, they've now moved it to 90 seconds. So we're 90 seconds to doomsday, and they just unveiled it, saying that the England soon will be swallowed up by the sea. Hundreds of millions will starve to death, and of course the bomb. Now, this is what they've been predicting over the last couple of years. Nothing has happened yet. I think the sea went up 1/4 of 1 inch or something like that.
Modern day revelation kind of something like that.
It is the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists.
Wow.
And they are. This is a real thing. This has been going on every year since 1947. 1947. So right now we have been moved to the closest we have ever been to doomsday.
No. When you say 90 seconds, what does that mean?
So that's this giant clock that they have. It's this big giant clock, and every year they unveil it, and it's based on a 12-hour thing. So before, back in the 1940s, we were 30 minutes to doomsday, and then it kept going up because we kept building bigger bombs, and more bad things were happening on Earth, and there was climate change. So it keeps going up and going, and now we are just 90 seconds away. We're a minute and a half away from doomsday. And part of the reason that we went up because I remember last year I think we were 2 minutes or something, but because of the adversaries that the U.S. has become to Russia, to North Korea, to Iran, to China, because of Donald Trump and the far right fringe, all these things added to all this stuff. COVID. The things that we never thought would come again are now back. Pandemics, and climate change, and these extreme cold conditions that we are going through right now. The water supply. There's all kinds of things that move us closer to extinction.
But nothing having to do with asteroids hitting the Earth.
That was a great movie. That was a great movie, by the way. But nothing as far as I know. But I mean, right now they are very concerned about what Russia's going to do if this thing, because we haven't talked about the Ukrainian war very much recently. Not in the last 2 weeks, because it's the same thing. It's the same thing every week. But if you watch it, and I've been watching it, man, Russia is continuing to pummel Ukraine. It has not gone down at all.
You just don't hear about it anymore. It's just
you just don't hear about it as much because we have Chinese balloons in the sky to overshadow what's going on in the Ukraine. But right now, we knew Russia was not telling the truth. And Russia keeps saying things. They said before that, we're not going to go into the Ukraine. They said this a year ago, because we're almost a year. We're almost a year into this war. And a year ago, they said, you know what? We're just doing military exercises. But you're doing military exercises, but you're building hospitals on the border, makeshift hospitals on the border of Ukraine to Russia and Belarus to Russia. They knew what they were doing. They had planned this for years. Yeah. And the fact that they keep saying, well, we have the nuclear weapons, which we could use. And then some guy comes out and goes, oh, no, Russia will never use the nuclear weapons. And then 2 months later, Putin goes, you know what? Maybe we have them. Yeah. Why don't we use them? So I think that's why these doomsday people are kind of like moving the clock forward.
Sure.
Because who knows? Who knows? Okay, Dan, we're coming up on a year on this Ukrainian war. How long do you think this thing is going to last?
I have friends in Ukraine that I don't even hear from anymore. I used to hear from them all the time. So
you
just reminded me I need to check on them.
Yeah, how long is this war going to last? Is it going to go on for another year? How long could it go on for? And how much involvement is the U.S. going to have? And once the U.S. crosses that line, are the U.S. then going to be at war with Russia? And then we start to bring out the big guns.
Are we already in a proxy war?
I mean, they're very careful not to cross. They come right up to the line and they don't cross it. They stay right on the line. But very soon, I think, with this meeting that's coming up next week, this meeting that's coming up next week in Poland, where Biden is going to go to Poland and he's going to discuss, hey, you know what? Let's escalate this thing. And when they escalate this with Poland, what is Russia going to do? And right now, okay, so we're 90 seconds to midnight.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few countries in a proxy war right now, And
this, this whole thing is actually leading to another story, which is, of course, it's always leading to another story, which is something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to get your opinion on. And this has come out. There's a new type of tourism going on right now in the world. And, there's all kinds of tourism, we got the sex tourism, we've got dental tourism, all kinds of things that you go. But now Ukrainian women and Russian women are taking tours to South America. Now, why are so many Russian women going to South America? Because South America, especially a lot of the places there, especially Argentina, you don't need a visa. You can go there visa free. So what a lot of Russian women and Ukrainian women are going there for is when they are in their last trimester of their pregnancy.
Sure.
And it's called, this new type of pregnancy tourism. You go to another country when you're pregnant, when you're from Russia, and you have the baby there. And then the baby is automatically a citizen of that country. And this is now something that some of these countries there in South America are going, wait a minute. What's going on here?
That's not really new, because Korea experienced a lot of that, and there was a different reason. So the affluent Mongolian community ladies used to fly to Korea. They even had this whole hospital set up at Incheon near the airport, where they would fly in. They would have their baby, and then they would fly out. The reason was because the birth rate of Mongolia, the survival rate of children being born in Mongolia was so high, or the death rate was so high, that they would fly into, and so that was kind of like the birth vacation. Tourism. They would fly into Korea, go directly to the airport, have their babies, because there was a higher survival rate in Korea. So but this is a whole different reason. And I have to ask, is it that bad that you want Argentinian citizenship?
You're waking up to bombs every day, or you're the fact that in Russia things have gotten, if you speak out against the war, you can go to jail. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why you would want to have a citizenship. And where can you go? Where can Russians and Ukrainians go where they don't need a visa? Argentina.
Yeah, list of visa-free countries, and you just kind of pick, Czechoslovakia, whatever.
And the thing is, they're flying there, having the baby, and then they're flying back to Russia. But what they do is they pay a lot of money to these agencies that say, fly here, have your baby. We'll take care of the passport. You can go back home and we'll get you this passport to here so you can leave Russia, because, once they have that South American passport, they can go to a lot of other countries that they don't necessarily want to go back to Argentina, but they can go to other places. Sure. So this is the reason. So now the Argentinians are like, wait a second. What are you doing?
It's a whole new industry then.
It's a whole, speaking of a whole new industry, there's another industry that is getting in some trouble there in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, this week, they had a massive raids across Hong Kong for shops selling dog meat and cat meat.
Oh, God.
Now, I know, Dan, you being from Korea, I don't know if you like that dog meat. What do you think of that dog meat? You like that stuff? Do you guys eat that there in Korea?
I've never eaten dog meat. Never. I know that it smells like horrendous. I've seen it, it's horrendous. It really is. I'm not going to knock the culture or the dog meat eating.
We're not saying anything about the culture.
It's just not for me. The different parts of the world, there's a lot of. They eat dogs in the Philippines too. They used to.
I've had horse meat here. I've had, people try to get me to eat dog. I haven't had anybody try to get me to eat cat. But in Hong Kong, dog meat and cat meat is illegal. It is very illegal there. Now I know in China, dog meat I've been to China. I've been to communist China. And it's on the street. You can buy it on the street. It's right there.
You can buy it like that too. Well, not as much, but Korea's like that too. You go to the market, and they have dog meat hanging there. It's the smell is just putrid. I can't stand the smell.
Yeah, supposedly, and in Hong Kong, you can get a caddy. You know what a caddy is? A caddy is a certain amount. I think it's 1.3 pounds. You can get a caddy of cat for $12. But if you get caught selling a caddy of cat, you can get 6 months in jail or a $640 fine.
Why? Is it because it's exotic? Hong Kong's like protein deficient, are they?
The cat's out of the bag. But they are saying that 30 million dogs and 10 million cats are slaughtered globally every year for eating.
Yeah, sure.
So I had to bring this up because I have a cat. I've always had cats. I love cats. I've never thought about eating my cat. But in Hong Kong, they are cracking down on the cat eaters and the dog eaters. So if you're going to Hong Kong, watch out.
That's a new one for me. Like cat, cat's a new one for me. I don't know any culture that eats cats regularly. Do you? I don't know any culture.
I don't know about the cat eating. I have not actually seen cat meat on the street. I've been to China quite a few times, seen a lot of dog meat, seen monkey meat, seen all kinds of things, but I haven't seen the cat meat. Yeah. I don't know how good a cat would taste. Maybe fluffy, tastes great. But speaking of animals and weird things about animals, there was a great story out of Japan now let me see if I can say this, the 𝗡𝗄𝘄 Zoo in Japan. They had it's funny just to try to pronounce these things, but anyway, they had a gibbon there in the zoo, and it's a white-handed gibbon, and she got pregnant. Now, the thing that makes this an interesting story, why it hit the international news, what we talk about here on DZRJ, is that she had no other monkeys in the cage with her ever. And so how did she get miraculously pregnant and have a baby? So this has been a very interesting story to come out of there. And this week, they believe that they have solved the pregnancy of Momu, the gibbon monkey, because she was isolated in a cage by herself. She gave birth, and the zookeepers, scientists have been baffled, but they did a DNA test this past couple of weeks, and this week the results came out. It turns out that next to her cage was a 34-year-old male gibbon monkey named Ito, and they have found a 9-millimeter hole in the steel cage. And they believe that Ito and Momo have been doing the monkey talk. They're in this tiny, tiny little hole that there seems to have been a screw that was.
What
not to use a term that, but the screw had come out of the hole, and so Mumu and Ito were using that hole for a while to enhance their relationship, and they believing that this is how Momo has had a baby that they did not.
Thank God for DNA testing.
They did the DNA testing at thousands of dollars of the zoo to try and figure this out.
You are the father.
So I don't know how happy Ito is about finding out that he is the father. Oh, he's 34 years old. But it turns out that they now I'm surprised. I thought they might have CCTV cameras around there or something, but it turns out they didn't. But they believe that this is how the two gibbon monkeys have been doing it there in the hang on a second, in the 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀 zoo there in Japan. So on that note, so our final story will be monkey sex here on the DZRJ with Dan Kang. We have been so happy to have Dan Kang. He was here with us last week, and Dan gave us his insight on stuff. And hopefully we can have Dan Kang come again because we want to do another big story. Dan is a somewhat of an expert on crypto. We want to talk about that. I've been kind of forced Dan to talk about that here on the show coming up soon. Talk about his cryptocurrency business that he has going on, because I know a lot of people in the Philippines have asked me about cryptos over the years, and we have talked about it much here on the show, but we haven't really gotten into the nuts and bolts of it or the loose screws of it. Can I go there? So anyway, for me, Eric Lecain here on the World News Jam, and our special guest, Dan Kang. Thank you so much for being here this week, Dan, on DZRJ and RJTV. We will be back again next Sunday, so please join us then. Everybody, please be safe out there. Be careful of earthquakes. And me and Dan will see you again very soon. See you then.
Thank you so much.